We're going to continue by talking about cis and trans fats, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. So, cis and trans, we already talked about a little bit. It's all about this double bond. So we've got a double bond in there, and then whatever's on the other side, in this case, two hydrogen atoms, if they're on the same side of the double bond, they're cis. Cis means same. If they're on opposite sides of the double bond, that's trans. Trans means opposite or across. Now the problem is that trans fats, because the chain can remain in this long straight line, trans fats, even though they're unsaturated, they act like saturated fats, which makes them bad. Now, it's recommended we have less than 6 grams of trans fats per day. You would be hard-pressed to get that much anymore. Most restaurants, most everything have eliminated trans fats from their diet, not because they care about your health, but because it's a marketing ploy. They can say, oh, no trans fat, and expect you to buy the chips because they're healthier than the other ones. In reality, everything is almost no trans fat anymore. Now, our body can make most fats from protein or from other fat sources. Some fats are necessary, but we can't make them. And there's 2 really important essential fatty acids, the ones that we have to get in our diet. They're actually 2 classes, omega-6s and omega-3s. Now, we commonly just refer to them as omega-6, omega-3 fatty acids, but in reality, these are whole groups of fatty acids. And to show you what omega-6 and omega-3 means, I'm going to go back to this slide. Omega-6 and omega-3 simply refers to 6 from the end or 3 from the end. In the Bible, alpha and omega, the beginning and the end. That's what omega is referring to here, the end. Specifically, this end. And it's saying how many carbons in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. There's your first double bond. Linoleic acid is an omega-6. Double bond is 6 carbons from the end. Alpha-linolenic, 1, 2, 3. There's an omega-3 fatty acid. ALA, EPA, DHA, those are all omega-3s. ARA, GLA, linoleic acid, these are all omega-6s. Oleic is an omega-9. That's not one you hear much about, but it's turning out that those may be more important than the other 2. So, in reality, omega-6s and omega-3s aren't just 2 types of fats, they're 2 groups of fatty acids. And these fats are essential precursors for compounds that regulate blood pressure, blood clotting, blood fat concentration, immune response, inflammatory response, all kinds of things. So let's start with the omega-6s. Mostly we're going to talk about linoleic, but others as well. We find omega-6s in most seeds and grains, vegetable oils, seeds, nuts, whole grain foods. Multiple omega-6 acids, all of them are important for our body as precursor molecules. For instance, arachidonic acid is a precursor for prostaglandin, an important molecule in our body. Too much omega-6 is not necessarily bad for you unless it's too much relative to the amount of omega-3 you have. Omega-6 and omega-3 have to be taken in balance relative to each other because they work against each other in terms of uptake. Too much omega-6 and your body won't absorb omega-3. Too much omega-3 and your body won't absorb omega-6. The biggest thing that omega-6 does for us is it controls our blood lipid levels and it controls our blood cholesterol levels. And it's really good at lowering the total cholesterol concentrations in our bodies. So it helps us to clean out our blood vessels and our arteries of the cholesterol that may be causing heart disease. Omega-3 fatty acids have a lot more roles. Multiple forms are really good for you. Most commonly, we find omega-3s in fatty fish. That's going to be our EPA and DHA. Plant oils and seeds, this is going to be linolenic acid, flaxseed, walnuts, soybeans, canola, etc. You really only need about 2 servings of fish per week and you're good on omega-3. So it's not like you got to pop pills every day. Omega-3s reduce the risk of heart disease, prevent blood clots, lower blood triglycerides, that's fats, lower blood pressure, lower your inflammation response. However, most omega-3 supplements can do more harm than good in a lot of cases. If your doctor prescribes omega-3 supplements, take them, definitely. The doctor is informed. They know that supplements can be tricky. But here's the thing. Omega-3 supplements can disrupt the balance of fats in your blood. That leads to a reduction in your omega-6 uptake. Also, these pills contain toxic levels of fat-soluble vitamins. A lot of fish oil pills have 3,000% or more of your vitamin K dose per day. Now your blood's not going to clot right. Also, it can do permanent liver and kidney damage just from a single pill. So there's that to keep in mind. And then there's this. Let's say you've got your fish. Happy little fish. Let's say it's a salmon. So it's a really big, delicious fish. Where do you think they're getting the fish oil from? Are they getting it from the meat of that fish? That meat sells for $15 to $18 a pound. So do you really think they're going to take the meat of that fish and squeeze the oil out of it and make it useless? No. They use that fish's skin. They take the skin of the fish and they squeeze oil out of it. And guess what else is in fish skin? Toxins and contaminants that they pick up from their food. So stuff like cadmium, arsenic, mercury, lead, radioactive substances. Fish eat what's in the ocean. Guess what humans use as the biggest waste disposal place on the planet? The ocean. Politicians oftentimes think the best solution is dilution, and they like to just dump everything in the ocean because they think it's big and it's not going to harm us. Well, guess what? That fish eats everything, then we eat the fish. Specifically, those fish oil pills contain what was in that fish skin. In this case, it's a lot of bad stuff. Now, we can get omega-6s and omega-3s from a lot of places. This chart breaks down just some common types of oils and fats that are in our diet. Now, orange, that's all of this stuff right here, that's saturated fat. That's what we're trying to avoid. Omega-6, that's this teal blue color, that's all this stuff here. Omega-3s, that's these little bits here, there's not much there. And then monounsaturated. These are unsaturated fats that are neither omega-6 or omega-3. And what we see here is pretty interesting. If you want omega-6, safflower and sunflower and corn oil are really good for you. Soybean and cottonseed oil as well. If you want omega-3, then you want flaxseed, canola oil, soybean oil. If you want saturated fat, well, coconut oil, that one is supposed to cure everything these days. That's a nice little myth. We all know butter is bad. Butter is healthier than coconut oil. So why do we all want coconut oil? Palm oil is in absolutely everything. Palm oil is banned in many countries because of how bad it is for us. Beef tallow is just delicious. There's nothing like a big bowl of pho with some floating beef tallow in it. Lard. Yeah, you can't have refried beans without some lard in there. Cottonseed oil. Okay, we're starting to get healthier now. Here's the thing. There's a lot of oil options out there, and they all differ in their fatty acid profile. The keys, the ones you really want to have around: olive oil, sunflower, safflower, canola, and flaxseed. Also, another one would be grapeseed. It's pretty good for you as well. If you have these oils sitting around and use them liberally, olive oil should be in your diet to the tune of 3 tablespoons per day. It's so healthy for your heart, 3 tablespoons per day. Sunflower, safflower, canola, flaxseed, grapeseed. If you have 2 or 3 of these and you use them liberally, and I'm talking like a half cup of these things in your daily diet, salad dressings, cooking, whatever, your heart is going to be very healthy. And this idea is the basis of the Mediterranean diet. And you've probably heard of this. The Mediterranean diet is the most heart-healthy diet on the planet. It's entirely based upon the idea of getting lots and lots of oils in your diet, but they got to be healthy oils. Now, not all of these oils here are cooking oils. You don't want to really cook with safflower or sunflower. They're super light. Those are good for dressings. So that's why you want to have some options. Either way, we can see from this chart, coconut oil doesn't appear to be all that healthy for us. We'll talk about coconut oil on another date. So how much should we be getting? Well, for omega-6, specifically linoleic, about 5 to 10% of our energy consumption. So if we're on a 2,000 calorie diet, that means somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 grams of omega-6 fatty acid per day. For linolenic, that's an omega-3, about 1 gram per day will do the trick. So the problem with this is that these numbers are old. We knew these numbers 25 years ago. Some of you weren't even born when these numbers were contrived. We've learned a lot about omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids now. For instance, we now know that they need to be consumed in very specific ratios. Now here in the US, we are on what's known as the Western diet. We are bread eaters. We eat a lot of bread, and bread is very rich in omega-6, so we end up with a very high omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. On the other end are the hunter-gatherer and Eskimo diets. These are very high in omega-3s because they eat lots of nuts and they eat lots of fish compared to bread. In the middle is where most of the rest of the world sits. And this chart doesn't necessarily say one way or the other in terms of what's good or bad, but some research is giving us ideas. Evidence indicates that a 2-to-1 ratio is the best. If you get 2-to-1 ratio omega-6 to omega-3, you'll get an 80% reduction in heart disease, 30% reduction in cancer, 35% reduction in autoimmune disease, 45% reduction in inflammatory response. That's great. I mean, that's fantastic. You're almost immortal at this point. Other studies show that a 5-to-1 ratio or higher increases hyperactivity, obesity, depression, violence, and lethargy. Still, other studies show that 10-to-1 or higher can increase risk of birth defects. Well, this sounds pretty clear-cut. 10-to-1 or lower is what we should be aiming for. Where are we in the U.S.? 50-to-1. We might be a little bit off. So what do we need to do? Well, cut back on the bread, put an uptick on the fish and the nuts. It's pretty simple. And we don't even have to make huge changes. Cut our bread by a slice, maybe 2 slices per day. The average American consumes 4 slices of bread per day, so cut it in half essentially. And then we just need to add 2 servings of fish per week. Just 2 per week. That's not even a whole fish. That's a tiny little piece of fish twice per week. So a very simple thing could lead to some very positive results. To our knowledge, there are no problems with doing this. There are no health risks at making these changes to your diet. None. To our knowledge, there are potential huge health benefits to making these changes, so it's definitely something you should consider doing.